Since nearly all of the descendants of George Barker Sr. had left North Carolina by 1825, this video series titles to this point will become subtitles for continuity and to assist researchers in distinguishing our line from others. Part 3 ended with 4 Barker brothers and their father, along with 3 Gevedon in-laws, being recruited by secessionist Jack May into a Morgan County Guard. To repeat the caveat from the last video, this story is not a celebration of our Barker and Gevedon ancestors' participation in the Southern cause. However, it will be told as factually as is known and often in great detail, because details are available from military field reports, journals, diaries, memoirs, and eyewitness accounts. It provides a unique window into their lives more than 150 years ago. In late September 1861, at May's boyhood farm at Prestonsburg in Floyd County, as they drilled and marched, new recruits swelled the guard to over 1,000 men, and it was turned in to the 5th Kentucky Infantry Regiment. On October 21st, they were sworn in at the Morgan County seat of West Liberty for a 1-year enlistment. The Barkers and Gevedons, 8 in all, became privates in Company A, commanded by Jack May. Of the 14 companies, Company A was one of 5 designated as mounted, but in reality there were few horses and they were mostly foot soldiers like the rest of the regiment. Although the men of the 5th were hard-nosed, rugged mountain men, they were unprepared for war. They were poorly dressed and their weapons were ill-suited for battle, mostly shotguns and old muskets. The entire regiment had 2 artillery pieces. News of secession activity in the region had attracted the attention of the legislature in Frankfort, as well as the Union High Command in Louisville. William T. Sherman ordered William Bull Nelson south up the Big Sandy Valley with 5,000 troops, mostly Ohioans, but about 1,500 Kentuckians were among them. 2 days after the 5th Kentucky was sworn in at West Liberty, 1,600 of Nelson's men and 2 artillery pieces arrived to confront the new recruits. In a brief but sharp exchange, 21 recruits were killed, 40 were wounded, and 34 captured. There was 1 Federal wounded. The rebels managed to escape and retreat south towards Prestonsburg. They left behind several wagons, horses, and reportedly a live black bear mascot. The ink barely dry on their muster cards, they had suffered their first defeat. Waiting for his supply wagons to catch up, Nelson did not pursue them immediately. On November 5th, he arrived with his main force of 3,500 men in Prestonsburg to find it had been abandoned by the Confederates as they moved further south towards the Virginia border. 3 days later, on November 8th, he continued down the old state road toward Piketon, now called Pikeville, in heavy rain with his cavalry in the lead, followed by infantry and artillery bringing up the rear. As they neared the bend in the river just downstream from Ivy Mountain, it narrowed to a single file passage constricted by the steep mountain face on the left and the Big Sandy River on the right. It was here that about 200 men of the 5th Kentucky, including Company A, lay in wait behind rocks and breastworks made from logs and brush on the side of Ivy Mountain overlooking the narrow pass.
Cold and wet and on the run, November 8th, 61. Uncle Will and my daddy too, we were waiting for the boys in blue. A regiment of Sherman's men winding round the mountain bend, holding back so we were told from coming down the Piketon Road.
When Nelson's men got within range of the small-bore guns and shotguns, the Confederates opened fire. It was 1 p.m. Colonel Lafferty, who was on the mountain that day, said, "The whole body became panic-stricken. Passage forward or backward for a time was impossible. A great many of their men and horses fell over the precipice into the river below, crowded over during the wild excitement.
Hell broke loose, the hill turned white, but could not hide that awful sight. No holding back the blood that flowed, chaos on the Piketon Road."
Meanwhile, the trailing Union infantry was ordered diagonally up the side of the mountain in an attempt to get above the rebels and cut them off. They began pouring fire down on the Confederates from above. The Barker patriarch, William, was one of several men on the right flank most vulnerable to the Union fire. One of the first to fall was Dr. George Foster of Owen County. Then Henry M. Barker's neighbor, John Pirant, went down. Not long after, William fell as well. Henry went to his father's side and held him in his arms as he slipped away. Henry's brother-in-law, Willis Gevedon, was an eyewitness to these events.
Will yelled Henry, come and see, your daddy's laying by a tree. I dropped my gun, ran to his side, and held him there till he died.
After about an hour and 15 minutes of intense fighting, running low on ammunition and fearing being surrounded, the Confederates beat a hasty retreat over the southeast face of the mountain and across the Ivy Creek Bridge. After a few miles, they felled trees across the road to retard Nelson's pursuit. By then, heavy rain had resumed and the Union column ended the chase.
A proper grave he would not see, Yanks bearing down, we had to flee. I grew up and I grew old one fateful day on the Piketon Road. On the Piketon Road. Cold and wet, on the run, November 8 of 61.
The fate of the Confederate dead is a mystery. Some accounts at the time report them being buried on site, and some older residents claim there were several graves with a flagpole that was destroyed after the road was widened. But the Highway Department said they would have been moved, and they have no record of it. A grave for William Barker has never been found, nor for any of the other Confederate dead that day, as far as is known. There was a battlefield memorial erected in 2001 near the mouth of Ivy Creek. Eager to sensationalize the secessionist threat in Kentucky and their defeat by Nelson's army, the New York Times greatly exaggerated just about every detail, claiming 400 rebels dead and thousands captured, along with 2 generals. In reality, there were about 10 killed on both sides, with a few Confederate captured, none of whom were generals. By the next day, the Confederates had made it to Piketon, where General John S. Williams had his main force of the entire 5th Kentucky. Low on supplies, they retreated farther south to Pound Gap on the Virginia border. Nelson occupied Piketon for a few days, but did not pursue them, reasoning that being low on supplies and winter setting in, they were of little threat. Nelson was right on both counts. Cold weather had come early. The winter of 1861-62 was unusually bitter. For 3 weeks, the men of the 5th Kentucky were cold and starving. Many of the soldiers were nearly naked, and one report claimed that there were 350 barefoot men and fewer than 100 blankets for over 700 soldiers. One visiting general was appalled and ordered 1,000 outfits for the men. Unfortunately, when the suits arrived, they were found to be of summer cotton rather than of wool. In mid-December, the following appeared in the Abington Virginian. We saw on Sunday last over 100 barefoot, thinly clad, but heroic Kentucky soldiers near Pound Gap, shivering with cold and marching to and fro over frozen ground, with feet as red as those of pigeons, assisting to keep off from your hearths the vandal scoundrels who have already invaded their own. Can you not spare them a few pairs of woolen socks, flannel shirts, and other necessities? Former Senator turned General Humphrey Marshall had been put in overall charge of the 5th Kentucky Infantry, as well as some Virginia regiments. On November 18th, the 29th and 54th Virginia Infantry regiments arrived at Pound Gap. The combined forces, now over 2,000 men, headed to Abingdon, Virginia to resupply and to recruit more men. It is likely that the Barkers and Gevedons got a first-hand look at 2 of the most famous generals in U.S. history when Marshall's growing army was visited by Robert E. Lee and Jeb Stuart. The Barkers and Gevedons would return to their native Kentucky within the month as part of Marshall's army. Their first real offensive campaign will be taken up in part 5 of this video series. The song The Piketon Road, of which segments were included in this video, was written by Gary Barker and recorded by his band Loose Cannon Bluegrass in 2010. A live performance of the song in its entirety can be seen by searching the song or the band on YouTube.